Ethics Group. Bert, the ethics guru, DeBella.
Issue number 1, doctors out of control. It's a matter of ethics. The Carbon Valley VA Medical Center is located across the street from the Carbon Valley School of Medicine. 80% of the physician staff assigned to the medical center also hold paid positions with the medical center. In addition to that, 3 major pharmaceutical companies are located a short distance away. The combination of these other facilities within a short distance raises some very serious ethical questions.
The controversy began about a month ago when Ethics TV did a report about an apparent conflict of interest. Behind me is the Carbon Valley VA Medical Center. Now, Kevin, if you could pan across the street, what you're seeing there is the Carbon Valley School of Medicine. And just down the street, 3 major pharmaceutical companies have their headquarters. Now, last winter, one of these companies, PX Pharmaceuticals, invited 13 VAMC physicians to a so-called consulting conference in New York City. The purpose of this conference, supposedly, was to discuss PX's strong presence in the oncology market and to provide data supporting its new drug, Cure-All. Specifically, PX wanted to know how to increase the use of Cure-All in all VA institutions. And they also wanted to update the docs on PX's clinical trial programs. Now here's the clincher. The trip included airfare, first-class hotel, meals, and entertainment, and each doctor received a $400 so-called consulting fee, and 2 of the doctors received a $1,000 honoraria for speaking at the conference. We have repeatedly called the VAMC and the company, but so far, no response. Jane Smith, Ethics TV News.
Again, a very serious situation. The chairman of the House Veterans Committee, Representative Slammer, responded indignantly to that situation at hearings before his committee. After hearing testimony relating to the so-called conference, he suggested an urgent need for training in ethical conduct for the physicians and others in the VA Medical Center structure. Are they aware, he thundered, that federal employees cannot accept gifts of lodging, meals, travel, and other expenses from entities that do business or want to do business with the government? So, Tom, what do you think about these doctors flying off to New York? I thought you could accept travel reimbursement to conferences related to your official duties.
Well, Bert, you can accept reimbursement from a company for a conference like this if the purpose of the meeting is for education or informational exchange. But before you accept the reimbursement, you really need to go through your ethics officer or counselor, and of course you need to have the prior written authorization of your facility director.
But such permission would never have been given in the case we're talking about here. It's obviously the entire purpose of this conference was to market their product. What a sham. There's absolutely no educational benefit to this conference. Therefore, attendance by VA personnel is unauthorized.
Lee, you are assuming that they are attending as part of their official duties. Suppose they attended on annual leave. The ethics rules don't prohibit employees from entering into consulting arrangements not related to their official duties.
You gotta give me a break now, Melissa. This event had VA written all over it. It was clearly aimed at the physicians in their capacity as VA doctors. What about the VA speakers? They're even using their official titles in the agenda. Everyone knows that you can't receive honoraria for speaking if it's related to your official duties, even if it's on your own time.
All right, let's consider the issue here. Based on these specific facts, what you have here is a classic use of public office for private gain, regardless of whether they're using their official time or not. First, Big Bucks was definitely going to pay these employees money in exchange for finding out how to better market their product to VA. That, in of itself, is a violation. Second, employees can't accept gifts from entities that do or seek to do business with VA, especially when the purpose is so obvious. Third, even if the subject matter of their speech isn't related to their official duties, employees can't accept compensation for speaking, even if it's called an honorarium, if offered to them because of their official position. The use of titles on the program makes it even worse, if that's possible. Bottom line, you go to your ethics official before accepting similar invitations. All right, continuing on with issue number 1, let's take a look at another incident that occurred at the medical center.
We're back here at the Carbon Valley VAMC, where yet another story has surfaced about possible serious ethics violations. One of the physicians here is Dr. ICU, a longtime and respected member of the medical staff. Among his other duties, he's often called on to recommend companies to the Chief of Staff that can provide crucial services to the medical center. Recently, he recommended one small company to provide MRI services. The contract, a lucrative one, was awarded and approved by the Chief of Staff. The only problem is Dr. ICU owns $3,000 worth of non-publicly traded stock in that company. We asked him about that in an interview, and he told us he didn't think he did anything wrong.
I don't see a problem here. My having stock in that company had nothing to do with the decision we made. The inside information it gave me helped us make an excellent decision. They are the very best at what they do, and they save the taxpayer a lot of money.
We did contact the Chief of Staff's office about this, but so far, no comment. Jane Smith, Ethics TV News.
Once again, I must refer to the recent hearings before the Veterans Affairs Committee. Chairman Slammer reiterated that it is a criminal violation for a VA employee to participate personally and substantially in any particular matter that will have a direct and predictable effect on his financial interests. Couldn't be plainer if you wrote it in stone. Now to my experts. Melissa, do you really think that Dr. ICU violated a criminal law? I mean, we're only talking about $3,000 in stock.
Well, Bert, by making the recommendation to contract with this company, Dr. ICU clearly participated in a particular matter which affected his financial interest. But there is a de minimis exception out there for matters involving parties that affect interest and securities of $15,000 or less. So,
come on now, Melissa. You've been around long enough that you know the difference between right and wrong, and you know that that exception only applies to publicly traded companies. This is a private concern. For all we know, this company's only worth $6,000. So clearly, Dr. ICU violated a criminal law here.
Lee, that may be so, but Dr. ICU can still get a waiver to participate in the contract, especially if his financial interest in the matter is not so substantial as to likely affect the integrity of his service to the VA.
You gotta be kidding me. I wouldn't give this guy a waiver to save my life. It is clear that this is a flagrant abuse and misuse of his official position for private gain.
Lee, guess what? You are right. The $15,000 exemption only applies to publicly traded securities. George, you're also right. Dr. ICU can request a waiver to participate in this contract, notwithstanding his financial interest in the matter. Lee, Dr. ICU is very fortunate that you're not making this decision. The medical center director, after consulting with the Office of Government Ethics and Regional Counsel, is the only person who can make the determination of ethical propriety. Next up, big trouble in the organization responsible for maintaining our national cemeteries. But first, our esteemed panelist, George Bradford, recorded a public service announcement some time back. Let's see if he has any future in the television business.
Employees do not want to get on the wrong side of the criminal conflict of interest law. In addition to imprisonment, employees can receive civil fines up to $50,000 for violating this law. Without a waiver, Dr. ICU could get into a lot of trouble for recommending this company, especially if his shares are not publicly traded. Hello, I'm George Bradford with the Office of Regional Counsel, and I'd like to talk to you about another common scenario at VA that brings this law into play. Let's assume Dr. ICU, who works at the Carbon Valley VA Medical Center, recommended the Carbon Valley School of Medicine to the Chief of Staff to contract for lithotripsy services. Dr. ICU is also a professor at the School of Medicine. Any problems? The criminal conflict of interest law and VA policy prohibit any VA employee who is an employee, officer, director, or trustee of any organization, including a university, from participating in a VA contract or any other government contract with that organization. So, if employees are employed with a university or other entity which is likely to be a provider of a sharing contract, what activities are they prohibited from participating in? Under such circumstances, the employees would be prohibited from participating in the following specific activities: drafting specifications or solicitations, acting as contracting officer's technical representative, negotiating any part of a contract, including price, evaluating bids or proposals, selecting or recommending the contractor, reviewing, certifying, or approving the contract itself or any award, modification, extension, specification, bid, proposal, payment voucher, time record, or any other document of significance to the contract, and reviewing or reporting time and attendance for contract administration purposes. They would, however, be allowed to participate in the following activities not related to a particular contract: supervising professional services provided but not for contract purposes. You could do so solely for purposes of ensuring quality of care. Developing workload projections, so long as such projections are developed independently of the contract for purposes of operating the VA facility and not developed for purposes of contract specification and not for contract renewal. Providing direct patient care within VA responsibilities. Performing oversight and administration within the employee's VA responsibilities, including record keeping, quality assurance activities conducted as part of the medical center operations rather than for contract evaluation, and reporting through VA channels for operational as opposed to contract purposes. Participating in any particular matter in which neither the employee nor the school has a financial interest, i.e., acting as a coder in another contract which does not involve the physician's outside employer. Engaging in permissible outside activities, such as approved teaching by a full-time employee. Most importantly, the department policy is that VA medical center directors must ensure that all chiefs of staff and each physician supervisor or manager and each allied healthcare manager receives a copy of VHA Handbook 1660.3, which addresses the conflict of interest aspects of contracting for outside medical services. A former VA chief of staff was criminally prosecuted for recommending that his VA medical center enter into a sharing contract with a university where he was a professor. Since that time, both Congress and the Office of Government Ethics have kept a watchful eye on VA to ensure that the department is in compliance with this area of law. So, before becoming involved in a sharing contract with an affiliated school, VA healthcare employees should always consult with their regional counsel or an ethics official in the Office of General Counsel to determine whether they have a financial interest in that contract. Thank you.
Issue number 2, free auto maintenance on the taxpayer. The Carbon Valley National Cemetery is a 770-acre property that contains an entrance area, information center, administrative and maintenance building, public restrooms, flag plaza, shelters for communal services, and burial areas. It is located near a very large veteran community. The cemetery director, Jane Headstone, is an apparent believer in the old adage that rank has its privileges.
Here at the Carbon Valley National Cemetery, waiting to speak to the director, Jane Headstone. It seems she doesn't have time to change the oil in her car because sources tell us she asked VA employees to change her oil right here at this facility on government time. Wait, let's find out. Ms. Headstone, could I have a word with you, please? Ms. Headstone?
I'm very busy right now.
Is it true that you have government employees change the oil in your personal car?
It's not like that.
Please, just answer my question.
I'm telling you, stop this right now.
Who are you?
I'm an employee here. I work in maintenance, and I've changed oil in Jane's car. And she uses, she pays us, she uses her own money out of her pocket. Sometimes it's payment to us. She'll let us use a government vehicle to take the cemetery landscaping equipment home for our own personal use. But no taxpayer dollars are ever spent. And this is just too much of a big thing, and I just forget it. Just shut the thing off. Just forget it.
Well, that's the dilemma. Misuse of government funds and equipment, or is this just a supervisor trying to help out her employees? Jane Smith, Ethics TV News.
In the Silicon Valley Times, Ian Hawke, president of a national ethics watch group, stated, and I quote, "Shame, shame, shame. Ms. Headstone's ethics reflect a classic case of government employees using their public office for the private gain of themselves or others. The public entrusts senior officials such as Headstone to perform their duties with integrity without abusing their office. By breaking that trust, she not only betrayed her fellow workers, but also the veterans VA serves. Performing maintenance on your car on VA property and taking weed whackers home is obviously a misuse of the taxpayers' money." Tom, is Headstone in really big trouble here?
Absolutely, Bert. Clearly she's used her public office for private gain by having the employees at the VA maintenance facility at the cemetery change the oil in her car.
Yeah, right. Where is the private gain? Where? I grant you that taking the lawnmower and the weed whacker home is an unauthorized use of government equipment, even if the workers did it on their own. But Headstone paid for her oil change. Why are you bothering this hard-working manager?
Because she violated the public trust.
Nonsense. Actually, the public should be thankful that Headstone is putting in all these hours supporting the veteran. She is actually saving the taxpayer money by not going off the facility to run errands. She can stay in charge even while her car is being serviced.
Melissa, listen to you. No matter how much money she pays these employees, use of the bay is not authorized. She has to go to Sam's just like you and everyone else. And like everybody else, she needs to do it on her own time. Now let's see what else is going on at the cemetery.
We're still here at the Carbon Valley National Cemetery because of yet another questionable activity. An insider source tells us that an employee here, an architect by the name of John Carpenter, is actually running a private business from his government computer. We're told he keeps computer lists on this computer and that he's even downloaded special software for this business. We're going to ask him about that. Excuse us, Mr. Carpenter. We've been told that you're running a private business from your government computer. Is that true?
Who let you in here? No, I don't do any such thing. Yeah, I've got some personal files on the computer, but I don't access them during business hours. What I do here doesn't cost the taxpayer a penny.
Okay, well, do you use the internet here for that private business?
Of course.
Do you send email for this private business?
Yes, sometimes.
Then you're in apparent violation of ethics regulations.
Look, I repeat, what I do here is on my own time, and it doesn't cost the taxpayer a penny, so I don't know what all the fuss is about.
Well, there you have it, an apparent violation, even though it's not costing the taxpayer directly. Jane Smith, Ethics TV News.
Tom, this has got to be a clear and willful violation of the regulations, correct?
Bert, there is a VA policy that allows for limited personal use of government telecommunications equipment if the use does not interfere with the employee's duties and its minimal cost to the government. I think in this case our architect employee, in my opinion, has found a loophole.
Come on, Tom. There might be a loop and a hole here, but there's not a loophole in policy. Policy that you're talking about specifically prohibits using government computers for commercial purposes or in support of for-profit activities or in support of other outside employment or business activity. And Melissa, by the way, you can't use government equipment to change your car's oil either.
Lee, as much as it hurts me to admit it, you're right. The policy, VA Directive 6001, also prohibits employees from modifying government equipment to include downloading personal software or making configuration changes to hardware or software for personal use. The prohibition would cover personal business software. So, our NCA's moonlighting job may actually become his full-time job. Next up, the trials and tribulations of VBA. But right now, George, you had your chance at a public service announcement. Now, it's my turn. And here's my contribution from the guru's point of view. Operating rooms are no place for slick operators. My esteemed colleagues from Ethics Group will dramatize this situation for you.
Okay, that's it. Go ahead and get them into recovery and start the post-op orders. I'll be in to start dictation in a minute. I'll meet you in there.
Yes, doctor. That was a great job.
God, another emergency surgery right at quitting time. I sure wish I got overtime for this.
What's wrong? What do you mean?
What do you mean, what do I mean? I wish I got more money for being here more hours.
This is the only pay you get? What your VA salary is?
Yeah, that's all I get. Why, do you get more?
Well, yeah. I get a $15,000 stipend from the university across the street.
What for?
Well, when I resigned that position to come over here, I did take a salary cut, so the $15,000 makes up the difference between the two salaries.
Now, wait a minute. The university pays you $15,000 a year. What do you do for it?
I don't have to do anything for it. I mean, I resigned my position. I have no ties or duties now with the university.
You know, that sounds like a conflict of interest to me.
There's no conflict of interest. I don't have any official dealings with the university.
And so they just pay you an extra $15,000 a year just for being here.
That's right. No strings attached.
Sounds like a pretty good deal. I might have to check that out.
You should. It is a good deal.
So what do you think? Can the surgeon avoid the ethics rules in this circumstance by simply not having any official dealings with his former employer, the university, while accepting a stipend from them? Or is he going to use the stipend to pay some criminal defense lawyer? Title 18, Section 209 of the United States Code prohibits government employees from accepting compensation from non-government sources for performing their official duties. One factor an employee may examine to determine whether compensation is, in fact, payment for government services is the intent of the party making the payment to the employee. For example, the Office of Government Ethics has stated that the payment of the salary differential of a person who leaves private sector employment for a position in the government would clearly indicate intent to provide extra compensation for government service. In our case, the surgeon's former employer, the university, did not expect any performance of duties in exchange for the stipend. The surgeon violated Section 209 by receiving extra compensation from a non-federal entity for performing his VA surgical duties. Please be careful with supplementation of salary issues, as violation of Section 209 could result in imprisonment and/or substantial fines. Further, VA physicians may be involved in a number of arrangements similar to our dramatized example, which may result in an issue under Section 209. The focus here is on pay for VA services. If you are a VA physician who receives compensation from an entity other than VA to perform services at your medical center, I strongly encourage you to first seek an ethics opinion. Issue 3. It's Christmas all year long at VBA, but is playing Santa going to jeopardize the mission? The Carbon Valley Regional Office has an excellent reputation for providing timely and thorough service to veterans. As the regional office's service has increased public awareness of their first-class service, some employees may have personally benefited.
We're here at the regional office of the Carbon Valley VBA, and with me is Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, sources tell us that you actually gave a $20 gift certificate to a VA employee because that person was so helpful. Is that true?
Well, sure I did, but he did a tremendous amount of work for me. Look, I was having a lot of trouble getting my situation evaluated, and frankly, without his help, I'd still be in there.
But surely you must realize that that's his job, that he's being paid to make sure you and all the other veterans get the treatments and services they're entitled to.
But he went way beyond that. Look, it was only a $20 gift certificate to the local dollar store. I mean, what's the big deal? It was well worth it.
Did Mr. Helper ask for that gift certificate?
No, of course not. In fact, when I tried to give it to him, he refused. But then, I beat him up for a few minutes, and he finally accepted it. I mean, that's what happened, Look, there he is. Why don't you ask him yourself?
Excuse me, Mr. Helper. Jane Smith, Ethics TV News. Could we talk to you, please, sir? Please? Could we? Just a minute. Well, clearly he does not want to talk to us, but we will be following this story, and we'll have more information as it develops. Jane Smith, Ethics TV News.
John Integrity, Regional Office Director, provided the following press release in response to the allegations that his employees care more about cashing in on gifts than about taking care of veterans. I protest the reckless use of labels without thoroughly understanding the facts or the law in this area. My employees receive ethics training every year and understand they cannot use their public office for their private gain or for the private gain of others with whom they are affiliated. These ethics issues are very factually intensive, and the gift rules are full of exceptions. That's why I encourage them to seek ethics advice whenever they are not sure on an ethics issue. So before any more spears are cast, I will obtain all the facts, and I suggest that others carefully examine and develop an understanding of the law. So Melissa, do these VA employees need a refresher course? Don't the rules prohibit accepting gifts given because of the employee's official position? Opinion, please.
Bert, integrity is right. The media needs to educate themselves on the law. There are a number of exceptions to the gift prohibition. Under one exception, a person can accept an unsolicited gift of $20 or less per source per occasion.
Melissa, I think you're the one that needs the refresher course. The exception doesn't apply to gifts of cash. It also doesn't apply to investments such as stocks, bonds, or certificates of deposit. The gift certificate the employee got is clearly cash and outside the exception. The counselor never should have kept the gift certificate. Read the book, Melissa.
Easy, Tom. You don't have to rub it in. But you're right. You can't accept cash or its equivalent under any circumstances if offered to the employee because of his or her official position. But I'm more interested in this picnic that involved a certain VBA employee.
We're in the parking lot of the regional office of the Carbon Valley VBA. Recently, a local company, the Diamond Corporation, held a picnic at its convention center, the Grandiose Center. The purpose of this picnic was to thank companies and organizations who had rented space there. VBA was one of the renters. Among those attending, unfortunately, was Martha Organizer, who was responsible for setting up the rental. But by going there, she may have violated ethics rules. We're waiting right now to ask her about that. Oh, and there she is. Excuse me. Could I ask you a question, please?
Yes, of course. How can I help you?
We've been informed that recently you went to a picnic organized by the Diamond Corporation and that you accepted food that you didn't pay for. Were you aware that you may have violated ethics rules established by the Office of Government Ethics?
You mean I shouldn't have gone?
Well, I'm not an ethics expert, but did you at least confer with an ethics counselor before you went there?
No. I mean, I didn't think it was a big deal. Only had a hamburger and a soft drink. I was only there for half an hour.
Well, generally speaking, you can't accept gratuities from companies doing business with the VA, and you also can't accept gifts because of your official position.
But we only rented the place one time, and that was months ago. We don't have any plans to rent again, and currently we're not doing any business with Diamond. My goodness, I would have paid if I had known. I only had a hamburger. Next time, I promise to seek advice first from an ethics counselor.
Thank you. Well, it seems that Martha Organizer really didn't know she was doing anything wrong and that she is truly sorry. But being sorry is not the issue here. Jane Smith, Ethics TV News.
Looks rather harmless. What do you think, Tom?
I disagree, Bert. First of all, it plain looks bad. But for Martha's position with the regional office, she never would have been offered this free meal. It looks like payback to me from the company for doing business with them. That's bribery and it's illegal.
Calm down, Tom. Bert, I think Tom needs to attend one of your ethics training sessions. The director is right here. We don't have all the facts. If the cost of the meal per person is $20 or less, then Martha stays out of jail.
But what's the real point here? George? Lee? Tom?
Well, I suppose since Diamond Incorporated is no longer doing business with the VA or won't in the foreseeable future, they are no longer a prohibited source. And I think the picnic may be a social or cultural event. If so, and no fee is charged to any person in attendance, Martha can eat and drink to her heart's content without worrying about the cost of the meal.
Very creative, Melissa. A solution that only a well-seasoned ethics counselor like yourself could come up with. But the real point here is to ask the ethics counselor before or immediately after accepting the gift. Employees who get an opinion from an ethics counselor before they act can save themselves a lot of pain. And guess what? That was our last issue for today. Next up, why we follow the ethics rules. But first, we have received some cards and letters about this subject from VA employees, and they have questions. Now let us find out if our experts have learned anything today. Here we go. I'll ask the questions, and then our panel will astound or attempt to astound us with their knowledge. Our first question is from a VA medical center at an undisclosed location. Question number 1. May you accept a free trip from a company that does business with VA to attend a conference during non-duty hours on a Saturday from a pharmaceutical company to learn about new drugs? What if you're delivering a paper? Lee?
Bert, government employees generally can't accept gifts from prohibited sources regardless of their duty status. You need to check with your ethics official to see if an exception applies.
Bert, you also cannot accept compensation for presenting the paper if it relates to your official duties. Relates to official duties includes any invitation to engage in the activity that was extended to you primarily because of your official position rather than your expertise on the subject matter.
And Bert, it also includes any invitation to teach a one-time session or write in addition to speaking, if extended to you by an entity who has interests that may be affected substantially by your official duties.
Oh, that's good. This is the first time all three of you got the same answer correct. All right, let's go to question number 2. May you accept honoraria to talk even generally about your VA research? Melissa?
Well, Bert, it depends. Great lawyer answer. It relates to your official duties, includes any talks where the subject of the activity deals in significant part with any matter of which you presently are assigned or to which you had been assigned during the previous 1-year period, or any ongoing or announced policy, program, or operation of the agency.
Bert, on the other hand, the rules do not preclude employees from receiving compensation for speaking on a subject within the employee's discipline or inherent area of expertise based upon his education, background, or experience, even though the speaking deals generally with the subject matter within the VA's areas of responsibility.
All right. Let's move on to question number 3. This comes from a chief of staff that chose to remain anonymous. May employees accept lunches from a drug company at weekly grand rounds or some other educational meetings? Tom?
Good question, Bert. Generally, employees may accept gifts to include meals from entities that do business with the VA if the value of the meal is $20 or less per occasion. And you can accept up to $50 in gifts from one source per calendar year. Some VA networks and facilities limit the access of drug companies to VA clinicians. Such a policy can have the effect of precluding the $20 gift from even being offered. However, employees cannot accept such meals on a regular, predictable, frequent basis, no matter what the value is.
And Bert, under no circumstances may employees solicit food, even if an exception applies.
All right. Let's go to question number 4. This is from Bob, the supervisor. May I accept a $60 tie from my subordinates for Christmas? How about my employees taking me out to lunch on my birthday? George?
Absolutely not, Bert. You cannot accept gifts from your subordinates or employees who make less money than you. On birthdays and Christmas or other holidays, you may accept a gift valued at $10 or less from a subordinate, but no group gifts and no solicitations. A potluck lunch at the office might be acceptable.
All right. Let's go to our next question. This is from Mary, who is an executive assistant at a regional office. Despite the general rule which prohibits taking up a collection to buy the boss a present, is there any exception where I may solicit contributions for a gift to the boss? Lee?
Well, Bert, for infrequently occurring occasions of personal significance, such as a marriage, illness, birth or adoption of a child, or upon occasions that terminate a subordinate official superior relationship, such as a retirement, resignation, or transfer, an employee may solicit voluntary contributions of very nominal amounts.
Good, Lee. Our next question is from Fred, who is a contracting officer. Can you permit a vendor to quote you in their newsletter in support of one of its products used by VA? Tom?
No, Bert, you can't use or allow someone else to use your official title or position to promote any product, service, or enterprise.
Now we got a question here from Joanne. She says she's from the Heartland. Is there anywhere that I can look up these ethics rules? Melissa?
Yes, Bert. These rules and regulations, as well as opinions and other general ethics information, are available from the Office of Government Ethics website at www.usoge.gov. Now, the VA also has specific information relating to VA ethics programs to include training materials, and that is available at OGC's website located at vaww.gc.va.gov/ethics.
Well, group, it's about time that we tell our audience why we follow these rules.
Well, Bert, let me go ahead and get things started. I think first, probably foremost, federal employees should never use their public office for their own private gain or for the gain of those persons with whom they're affiliated.
And Bert, employees must always be impartial when conducting their official duties and not make a decision based on some financial or emotional relationship to any person or outside entity.
Tom, do these rules prohibit employees from moonlighting or having large stock holdings?
Generally, no, Bert. These rules only come into play when the employee's official actions conflict with these outside financial interests or outside activities.
But group, what's the real point here that we want to leave our audience with? Lee? Tom? George?
Calling your ethics counselor here at General Counsel or at your local regional counsel's office.
Melissa, why don't you tell your colleagues who have been bashing you the past hour why seeking the advice of an ethics counselor is a good idea?
If an employee provides full disclosure of the issue he or she has encountered...
And what does full disclosure mean?
The employee discloses all significant facts in a timely manner.
All right, the employee provides full disclosure, then what?
If the ethics counselor provides incorrect advice, that employee cannot be administratively disciplined, and a criminal prosecution is highly unlikely.
Lee, do you get these protections after you act?
Generally, no, you don't, Bert. In fact, if the employee discloses an ethics violation to an ethics counselor, counselor may have to disclose that information.
Tom, is the employee required to get ethics advice in writing?
Generally, no, Bert, but it is highly advisable to assure these protections that the other folks have been talking about.
You know, George, many employees outside the federal government, like physicians at an affiliated medical school, can engage in activities from which VA employees are barred. Why are our employees, even our part-time employees, subject to these rules?
Because our public servants are held to a higher standard. The taxpayer places great trust in government and expects federal employees use their positions to accomplish their agency's mission and not to enrich themselves or their friends.
Hey, George, that sounded pretty good. Maybe you should do all our public service announcements. That's all the time we have. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to watch the broadcast. The issues we have attempted to discuss are difficult, but similar issues are arising every day at VA. My prediction? A better informed staff will avoid many problems in the future. Remember, whenever you come across an ethics issue that you can't resolve, call an ethics official in the Office of General Counsel or your regional counsel, but don't call these folks. Just kidding. Regional counsel attorneys like these folks are very knowledgeable in the area of ethics, so please, please, please consult them to avoid the possibility of being disciplined or, worse yet, criminally prosecuted. Seek ethics advice before you act. Now, here is an important message from our secretary. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. The American people have a right to know that the men and women they entrust with the responsibilities of public service discharge our duties with integrity and honor. VA employees must never use our offices for private gain and must always be impartial in performing our duties. Anything less betrays our fellow workers and America's veterans. 25 million men and women who offered their very lives to defend our freedom. By contrast, keeping faith with federal ethics laws and regulations maintains and even increases the public's trust in our government. Ethics laws and regulations affect all administrations within VA, and ethics issues can arise in any part of our department. Each time a VA employee acts outside the rules, he or she also violates our nation's sacred compact with those whose service and sacrifices have kept our nation free and prosperous for more than 226 years. I am proud that ethical failures are rare events in VA, and that nearly all of our 226,000 employees are highly professional men and women with deep commitments to public service and exceptional standards of personal conduct. Despite this, ethical failures do occur. Each violation hampers our department's ability to complete our mission of service to veterans. And because violations lead to sanctions, including dismissal and criminal prosecution, a violation can hurt you as well. Every VA employee must know and clearly understand federal ethics rules and regulations. Never hesitate to consult with the Office of General Counsel or your regional counsel's office if you have questions on any ethics issue. An ethics opinion can protect you from disciplinary action and possibly from criminal sanctions. I do not want to lose a single employee because we failed to remind you of the standards of conduct we are all required to follow. Now more than ever, VA employees must place above private gain loyalty to our Constitution, our nation's laws, and ethical principles. Thank you for your time today and for dedicating your career to serving our nation's veterans and their families and the American people. May God bless the United States and the men and women who defend her.